Hi guys, welcome again to my YouTube channel. Today we would be discussing a particular document that is required by the university you are applying to for you to submit when applying. This particular document tends to speak towards your analytical skill, your critical skill, your sometimes creative skill, and then it shows your writing abilities. This document is the writing sample. So, what is a writing sample? A writing sample is a document that the program you're applying to requires you to submit when you are applying. So usually there is this part in your app or in the application portal where you see the writing sample or something like a portfolio. These are the terms you are likely to see. Just know that in a case where you see the both term appearing, choose just the writing sample and do not bother about the portfolio. And so the writing sample is a document, usually a PDF file or a Word document form that you submit to the university, to the program, for them to be able to access your writing skills, for them to be able to access your critical skills, for them to access your academic standing, and also for them to access your research skills. The thing is that there are no limits to what kinds of program would require this. Every program has specific requirements, but mostly any program that is research inclined would likely ask for a writing sample, especially if it also has certain kinds of funding attached to it. They just want to see something that you had written before, how you wrote it. They just want to see and get to have an insight into your ability to be in the academic field or in the research field. A common misconception that people have when it comes to writing sample is that it has to be related to the field you are applying to. So for example, let's say you are changing fields from what you've always known or where you are working at to a different kind of field. You may have the thought that you are required to have a paper or submit something that is in line with where you are going to. That's not really the case. The thing is that the school or the program just wants to see something that you have had before. If it is in line, then that is good. But if it is not in line, then there are no hard or fast rule to that. The only rule that you should follow is any rule that is specifically stated by that program. So make sure that you find out what instructions that program you're applying to has attached to the writing sample you should submit. Some of them may say something as specific as the number of words that they want to see, or the number of pages that they want to see, or the kind of writing sample that they want to see. So it depends. But in a case where there are no specific example, one rule of thumb is that your writing sample should be about 5 to 15 pages. If it is more, that is fair, but don't let it exceed about 30 pages. In fact, in my opinion, 30 pages is a lot. So your writing sample should be somewhere between minimum of 5 pages and a maximum of 15 pages. This is the same number of pages that you are likely to submit if you were to submit a paper for a publication or for a conference. So it only makes sense that this number of pages should actually be the number of pages you should aim at for your writing sample. In a case where you see optional for writing sample, I would beg you not to skip it. Please make sure that you submit a writing sample. The thing is that the university would usually say it is optional. The times where it is very required is something like a PhD program where you have to submit something that you have written at some point. But here is the thing. Even if you see optional in a master's program, but you are expecting some kind of assistantship or funding to come from that application, please make sure you submit a writing sample. this could actually help to up your game when you are applying. Regardless of whether you see compulsory or optional, submit a sample for them to see. All right. Now, let's get into what the graduate admission committee expects to see in your writing sample. Like I already mentioned earlier in the video, your writing sample suggests to them that you have good writing skills or poor writing skills. It also shows them that you have the ability to think critically. It also shows them that you are able to go through the graduate college. And finally, it shows them that you have a good research skill. So let's go into what the graduate admission committee expects from your writing sample. The first thing that they expect to see is originality. Your writing sample has to be original. It has to be from you. It has to be something that you have thought about. It should not be something that some other person has written and then you probably just plagiarized them. It has to be completely original. Secondly, is it has to show critical thinking. What do I mean by critical thinking? If you have actually done a research, probably your undergraduate years, you would come across a section that is called the literature review. Now, when you are done writing the literature review, the admission committee wants to see a part where you kind of summarize everything that this literature has been talking about, and then you just give them one or two sentences into your own thoughts about that. That is what the critical thinking shows. It shows that regardless of what every other person has said, this is my own stand. And the thing about it is that the critical thinking that your writing sample shows to these guys also make them understand your stance or your readiness to be a researcher or to go through the academic rigor of the graduate college. So just know that even though you are trying to, present some literature review to just show them that these are the conversations that have been going on in this field, you also need to come to a place where you are able to give a summary as well as talk about your own stance. And this shows them that you are ready to be a researcher or that you have at least some of the skills and qualities that are needed for you to be a researcher. What are the kinds of writing samples that is expected of you to submit? There are particular programs that will give you very straightforward instructions to say this is what we expect of you to submit in your writing sample. Some of them could tell you a poetry, some of them could tell you a creative writing, some of them could tell you an academic or a research writing. If for any reason you have never had a lot of experiences in the research field, except probably your undergraduate thesis, that is enough to suffice. One question that could be coming into your mind is, well, my undergraduate thesis has a lot of pages. So how do I reduce it to be about 5 to 15 pages like you said? Yes, that's a very valid question. One of the things that you can do is, remember last week we talked about research proposal. So you can shorten that your undergraduate thesis and use the same format of a research proposal, except that this time you are not proposing anything. You are just taking from what you've already written before and you're trying to just summarize and shorten them to be very concise. That means that your topic will still remain. You kind of summarize your introduction and just give them an introductory paragraph. And then you go in with your research objectives, your research questions. You go in with some of the literature review that you have done. You go in with, if you did, field surveys and stuff like that, you put in that section that talks about the kinds of questions you ask them. If it's a questionnaire, if it is an interview, find some of those very critical information and just add up. And then you close up by discussing the findings. These are already things that are already in your paper in the original undergraduate thesis, but what you are trying to do is that you're trying to shorten them. So you're not giving us the entire long length of the story, you are already shortening it. So when you come to the literature review and probably you reviewed about 100 literature, you can shorten it and just give us what 20 literature talks about. So look for the paragraph that kind of talks about what your work was all about and put as your literature review. And then do not forget the critical thinking aspect where you kind of just summarize it and tell us this is your own standing regardless of this literature review. and then you discuss your findings. And don't forget the references. By the time you are done, this should be about 5 to 10 pages or 15 pages, and that is just enough. But in cases where you maybe feel like your undergraduate thesis was not or is not strong enough or is not original enough, what can you submit? I would advise that if you have articles that you've written, newspaper excerpts, if you have blog posts, anything that could come out as 2 to 5 pages. It does not have to be something you have published. It could just be anything literally that you have written to show that you've thought about something that is going on in maybe in the field where you are applying to, or in the field where you were before, or if it's the same field, something that is it's a worry to you, something that you really think about. If you ever have any essay you have written in school, you know how maybe a lecturer gives you a paper to write or a topic to write on in class as maybe your grade, or something that is an assignment, or something you presented, maybe a seminar topic that you presented while in school. That is enough for you to use as a writing sample. The only thing is that you can now increase it or you can develop on it if it was not a lot of pages. I remember in my undergraduate years, we used to write 10 papers. There's something we call 10 paper, and usually our 10 papers are usually up to 15 pages. Then in school, that's our rule of thumb. Your 10 papers should be at least up to 15 pages. So if you have a very good topic that you felt like you wrote as a 10 paper, you could actually improve upon that and submit as a writing sample. So it's not something that you need, like to do a lot for. It's just something that shows what you have thought about, how you think about these things, how you've written about it. Note that your writing sample should be clear, it should be concise. That starts from the topic till the very end. It should be original. So please do not plagiarize. Do not for any reason plagiarize. I have seen cases where you may think it's just a writing sample. If they run it through some kind of test and they find out that you plagiarize, they could withdraw your admission, or they may not offer you any admission. And sometimes you won't even know that that is the reason why they are not giving you this admission. So as much as possible, make sure that your writing sample is original to you. It is something that if you are asked to defend, you can defend it. I remember when I was eventually called on to do a PhD interview, I was asked questions about the paper I submitted for my writing sample, because it was a paper I had actually published. Rather, it was a manuscript I had sent out for publication, but at the time it hadn't been approved or accepted to be published. So I was asked questions about it, like, what's up with this paper? What were you thinking when you were writing this paper? How were you seeing this paper solving some needs in the field? So imagine that it was not a paper I wrote myself. I may not have been able to defend it. So that's what I want you to have at the back of your mind when you are submitting a writing sample. Make sure that it is something that when you are called upon to defend, you are able to defend. Okay? So I hope this video has been helpful for you. And if there are things that are still not clear to you, please comment and I will do well to respond to you. See you in my next video. Bye.